Here, starting off, just a little kitchen trick. Just get like a wet towel underneath the cutting board so it doesn't slide around or anything. Got some chicken thighs here. You can use any kind of chicken for this dish. Chicken breast is probably going to be the most common. Chicken thighs are going to stay a little more tender. You're not going to be really overcook them as much as chicken breast. And what we're doing here is we're just dicing it into little small strips, just so it cooks fast. So once you got all your chicken cut, you're just going to want to dispose of this. And you're going to want to clean everything off nice and just use a little hot water. Cutting board, you either want to wipe clean and sanitize it, or in this case we can just flip it. And that'll prevent any cross-contamination with the chicken or any kind of salmonella or anything like that. We're going to come right over here. We're going to start cooking our chicken. Let's turn this one on to high. We're going to get a little bit of butter. And really, we're just looking to get a little bit of color on the chicken. You're going to cook it most of the way through here, and then it's going to finish in our sauce that we're going to do for the chicken. And the color will just help improve the flavor on the chicken as well. Just another flavor element that we're going to get on the chicken. So let that heat up there. And when you're cooking the chicken, you only want to do a little bit at a time so you don't overcrowd the pan. And so all the chicken will cook nice and evenly. Let that butter go down, and then we'll move on to the sauce here. Get one onion. We're just going to dice this onion. So whenever you dice an onion, a really good tip is to keep the root of the onion on. You're going to cut the other side off, and the root will help you from not crying as much when you cut the onion, so you don't get too emotionally attached. I'm going to go ahead and peel the onion here. And when you're dicing an onion, you can either, a couple different ways people like to do it. They like to julienne onions, which in this case we're not doing, but then if you julienne onions, you're gonna cut both the tips and then come down all the way down here across the onion. In this case, we're dicing. So a good way to dice an onion is you take the blade, you come in here, come all the way down. You're gonna want a flat hand on top here so you don't cut yourself. And you're gonna do a few cuts here. The more cuts you do, the smaller your onion dice is gonna be. Final one up here. And you're going to come down vertically all the way across, just kind of like you were julienning an onion, just like what we talked about. Go all the way down. And then you're just going to come in and just cut right in here. You turn the onion over. Cut it down here. So there's almost no waste of the onion. Here we have our butter melted. I'm throwing a few pieces of chicken at a time here. Again, you don't want to overcrowd the pan too much. I want to leave a little bit of space in between the chicken. We're going to let that go for a couple of minutes, just until we see some nice color on the other side. We're going to flip it and then put it aside to rest. So right now we're just gonna kind of flip the chicken around. See how it's getting some nice color on the other side. And again, that's just gonna build the flavor of the chicken here. Try to flip it all around. So for the sauce, we have our onion here. We're just gonna finally rinse up some garlic as well. I said mince, but I'm just slicing it down right now. With the garlic, if you wanted to really get a nice mince on it, you can either do it just like how we did the onion, or throw it in a food processor, throw it in a blender. I mean, anything will really work for garlic. Or you can just buy the crushed up garlic already. So we got a garlic cut up there. We got a pot back here. We'll throw some butter in, just a little bit. Let the butter go down, and we'll throw our onions in after that. It's nicely melted in the pot. We're just going to get our onions, just throw them right on in there. With the onions, we're just going to put them on about medium-high heat, and you're just going to sweat the onions down. So there's a couple different ways you can actually cook onions, and you'll hear a lot of things. You'll hear the term sweat a lot, which basically just means you're kind of cooking them until they get translucent in color. We got our onions here, not getting any color on them. They're just about to turn, kind of changing color a little bit. Perfect time to add all the garlic in there. And you're just gonna let the garlic go for about 45 seconds, maybe a minute, just until it gets fragrant. You're not looking for any kind of color on the garlic or anything like that. And then we're gonna add in our spices. So next we're gonna add our spices in here. We have a mix of chili powder, cumin, and coriander. We're just gonna toss those in, mix it around with the onions and garlic, just so that the spices kind of toast up a little bit. So again, we're just looking for a little bit of fragrance. You're not looking to cook any of this stuff out. All right. So once this is all nice and toasted up here, we're gonna add the molasses and cider vinegar to it. And this is gonna help to deglaze anything that's on the pan. So deglazing means any kind of like anything that's stuck to the bottom of the pan, which we don't really have here, from the onions or maybe the garlic or maybe the spices. It'll help just kind of get that off the pan and get back into the sauce that we're making. And then after that, we're going to add in our chicken stock. And then we're going to let that come to a boil. Alright, so oregano here. Just gonna take some, and a lot of people, the only really herb you can use the stem for, or we like to use the stem for, is cilantro. Everything else you don't want to use the stem for. So the oregano, instead of just kind of like individually like picking it off like this, which will take you absolutely forever, a good trick is to start from the top here and just kind of go down with your fingers. You get all the oregano leaves there, leaves you nothing but the stem. And this top portion, you just kind of pick off. And that's that. So we got our oregano here. Just gonna take this and go right into our sauce with it. So you got our sauce boiling here. We just threw in our oregano. You can kill the heat once it starts to boil. We have our chicken here that we cooked earlier. We're just gonna add our chicken right into there. And then once you have your chicken in here, you're gonna stir it around, and you can let this sit for anywhere up to an hour at room temp. And this will ensure the chicken absorbs some of that flavor that we have in the sauce, as well as finish cooking in the sauce. Okay, so now we're gonna start on our salsa verde. It's gonna be a raw salsa verde to start, which means nothing is gonna get cooked until later. So we have our cilantro here, 1 onion, a few serrano peppers, which are a little hotter than jalapeno peppers. Your mildest serrano pepper is probably going to be equal to your hottest jalapeno pepper. Set those aside. We got some garlic as well, some whole garlic cloves, and some tomatillos. So we're going to start with the tomatillos. You can get some warmish water going. You're going to peel the tomatillos, super easy to peel. You're going to get that husk clean off. And then sometimes it can be a little sticky to the touch after you get the husk off. So you're just going to kind of massage it under some warm water. And there you go. Alright, so with our salsa verde, got everything prepped out here. We got a little cocktail blend of pineapple juice, orange juice, and lime juice. We're going to put that right in the blender. Probably do 2 different batches of this just so you don't overfill the blender. You always want to start with the juice to make sure everything kind of blends easily and smoothly. Next up, we're taking our serrano peppers and we're just chopping off the ends of the pepper here. And if you want this salsa a little less spicy, which it's not too crazy hot, just because of the tomatillos cool things down a lot, you can actually take your serranos and de-seed them, which we're not going to do here. Or you can use something like a jalapeno, for instance, that has a little less kick. So we're going to have some serranos, along with the juice, a couple of whole cloves of garlic here. This is a real easy salsa. What you guys are going to do is just toss everything in at once. Tomatillos, you can just take them and cut them in half just so they blend up a little easier for you. If you leave them whole, that's fine too. Depending on the power of your blender, it might just take a little while for everything to get pulsed up nice and evenly. Take our onion, and it's going to be a little different than last time. We're actually going to quarter this onion. So you're going to want to take the two sides off there, the 2 ends off. You're going to want to cut it in half. You're going to peel this onion again. Instead, probably cut it in 8s, cut it down the middle one time. Right in the blender. Then you're going to take your cilantro, so just like I said earlier, the cilantro, you don't have to pick any of the stems off or anything like that. You can use the stems. So we're going to cut almost down to right there, just where that tie is. And you can also use this as well. We're just not going to use this today because there's a lot of stems in it. And you can throw the cilantro right in the blender like that, but just to help it process things along a little bit, so you get a nice little rough chop. Toss that in right on top. And then we'll get some salt. You always want to salt your food. And you're going to want to kind of put what looks like too much salt in here, just because of all the cilantro and the tomatillos. It'll just absorb all that salt. So second time through here. Again, this is going to be a raw salsa verde for now, which basically means nothing is going to get cooked. The tomatillos, which actually a lot of people think they're a tomato, are actually not a tomato, but they're in the tomato family. They really call them a Mexican husk tomato. So you'll see inside, it almost kind of looks like a green tomato. It has a nice, bright, tart, acidic flavor when it's raw, and when you cook it, or put it in the oven and roast it rather, it develops a nice sweet flavor, and it kind of loses some of that acidic quality that it's known for. Cilantro, chop that up, nice fine rough chop there. Just toss that right in. And then again. Throw some salt in there. And don't be too afraid to really add some salt in there. There you go. We're gonna blend this up. We'll see here. It's got a nice consistency to it. It's kind of chunky, not super runny, so it's gonna hold up really nicely against our enchiladas. So right now we're just warming up our corn tortillas so they're more pliable. With flour tortillas, you really don't have to warm them up. You can if you want, but flour tortillas tend to be a little more good to work with, a little more stretchy and good to work with, so they won't tear on you when you start building your enchiladas. Doesn't really take long. Just got a pan on high heat here. Just put the tortilla on, let it sit for 15-20 seconds, and flip to the other side. Another 15-20 seconds, and it is all done. All right, so now we're gonna assemble our chicken enchiladas. We have our salsa that we just made here, our salsa verde, and we're going to do a nice layer on the bottom of the pan here. May splash out a little bit, that's fine. And so this is just gonna help keep the enchiladas in place when we set them in there. We're gonna start off, we have yellow corn tortillas, which these are actually made out of Savannah, Georgia, and Meatla Tortilla Company. But you can use any kind of tortillas. You can use flour, you can use blue corn tortillas, which we also have. Any variety that you prefer works. So we're gonna start with some Oaxacan cheese here. It's a Mexican melting cheese, kind of similar to mozzarella in the States. Flavor profile, almost kind of like Monterey Jack. Then we're gonna take our chicken that we've had cooked and in our kind of braising liquid, if you will, to finish off. We're gonna set some chicken in there, as much or as little as you like. The more you add, the harder it is to roll up. And then optional, this cheese here is a Chihuahua cheese. Kind of similar to mild cheddar in the States, if you will. Really good for melting. And we're gonna top our enchiladas with this, but I'll just throw a little extra in here. Now the tricky part is the roll. So if you have too much in there, it's not gonna roll up on you. I'm just gonna kind of roll this up, kind of facing towards me. I'm gonna set that in, right like that. Got our enchiladas here, plated up nicely. We're just gonna cover it, so we're gonna take more of the salsa verde. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's right on top. Got some extra left over for some dips and chips. And then we're gonna cover it with a bunch of this Chihuahua cheese that we still have. Everybody loves cheese, so you can just go crazy on it. And then once we have this topped off, we're gonna go ahead and put it in the oven just until the cheese is melted. Kind of nice and golden brown, if you will. Just because everything is already cooked through, so it doesn't need to be in there for that long. We got our oven preheated over here at 500 degrees, just to speed things up. Slide them right on in there. That's it. Garnish with a couple of sprigs of cilantro.